Today begins our Load to Launch series. We're going to begin today talking about stance and floor pressure and how to create and understand the feeling of engaging every muscle in our stance so that we create and understand our explosive range of motion. So when we're talking about stance, first of all, one of the biggest mistakes I see and that we have is that too many kids are too far inside themselves. And so what I mean by that is whether if you're a right-handed pitcher and your right foot's up, we have one foot behind the other, we have a toe turned out, we'll be too wide. All those things are created and they're unnecessary. When we talk about where we should be balanced most, it has to come from through our hips, because if we don't get underneath our hips with our legs and our sprint alignment is what we'll call it in sprinting. If our sprint alignment, so we'll start to use the term, if our pitching alignment doesn't start good from the beginning, that means we're already setting ourselves up for poor performance as we go through our pitching motion. So a couple of key concepts there. Feet, when they're hip width apart, means that the left foot generally is hip pointer over the second and third toe, okay? Big toe is your first toe, and then pinky toe is your fifth, so second, third. So if this is me hip width apart, when I step behind the rubber, I want to be sure that I keep the same distance between my feet. That is what's going to create the most balanced and able to produce force position that I can get to. Okay? If you have kids that struggle balancing from here, then that means we've got to work on it, because this should be your most explosive position. And kinetically, it's going to sequence the muscles to be able to provide that explosion most successfully. So we have to get comfortable in this position. So things that you can practice right away are how to step back and be comfortable. Once I've found my space, do I consistently step back with that space in between? If I'm not consistently doing that, then I'm going to start with hips open or hips closed. Anytime you have a motion that you start with, if I'm internally rotated, meaning this hip is internally rotated, when I push off, my brain is going to try to balance that out by having an external rotation moment, because your brain is always trying to balance you. So the more you start set up that way, you're going to express motions in the opposite direction before you even move in the direction you're intending to go. Because your brain understands the task, which is moving, and it's trying to accomplish that any way it can. So, stance, hip width apart, step behind, hips start square. Okay? Now for some of us who have I don't need to put my heel, when we start this way, it should be so much more balanced to where the pressure is on your forefoot, on this back foot. So the heel is slightly elevated. This elevation, when we start to get to our launch, isn't going to change. If you like to do this to be comfortable, understand that the straighter this knee is, you have to bend this. And I promise you, for the most part, that when you start to bend this knee, it's going to feel more comfortable to lift the heel off the ground. That's perfectly okay, and that's actually more suitable for us as far as creating explosive potential.